From Mr. Tom. No, Mr. Blenkinsop is not here. I thought he was going to raise a point of order. If there are no further points of order, we come now to the 10-minute rule motion. Alison McGovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It may seem strange to some at a time of global economic turmoil to want to talk about culture. However, I'd like to quote in favour of doing so one of this country's finest economists, Maynard Keynes. He said, and on the publication of the first annual report of the Arts Council in 1945, Keynes said, "The day is not far off when the economic problem will take the back seat where it belongs, and the arena of the heart and of the head will be occupied by our real problems, the problems of life and of human relations and of creation." And I think he was right about that, Mr. Speaker. The economic problems that we face are real, many and serious. However, culture and its role in our towns and cities is a highly important one. And I wanted to raise this bill in the 10-minute rule motion today in order to put my concerns on the record about what could happen to culture in some of our towns and cities and counties in Britain. There is a very real fear out there, Mr. Speaker, that we could see not just cuts in the arts sector. Everybody appreciates that there will be cuts and that the cultural sector will need to take their share of efficiencies, but total withdrawal by some local authorities from providing cultural services. I give the example of Somerset that recently cut all 160,000 of its direct grants to arts and cultural bodies. Bedfordshire looks set to no longer fund its music service at all. And I draw on my own experience, Mr. Speaker, as a Southwark councillor, having to watch the London Borough of Southwark close the only children's museum in London. And that showed me the importance of making sure that local authorities continue to prioritise culture. Now, I would just like to say this to the House, that local funding choices are important. Of course they are. I wouldn't dream of telling local authorities what to do, by and large. Of course, the government's role in giving local authorities enough funding is going to have a massive part to play in whether or not they can provide decent cultural services. And nor do I want to be prescriptive. This bill is not being proposed to try and tell local authorities that one kind of culture ought to be good for them. I think diversity in our cultural services provided by local authorities is a truly good thing. I think in my own experience, I've seen great local authorities lead on culture in as diverse places as Kent, in my own part of the world, in Merseyside, in Leicester. We've got some visionary local authorities, and I pay absolute tribute to what they do in making sure that our towns and cities are ones that we can be proud of, where there are public spaces that bring people together and share in their history and heritage. But actually, the reason for this suggestion of mine is to start a debate. The Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964 gives a very important role to the Culture Secretary of State. It enables the Culture Secretary, if they feel it necessary, to say to a local authority, you're in danger of not providing sufficient library service. I want you to stop with those plans. I think they're not good enough for the people there. I think they need a library service that provides public education for very good reason. My argument is that that role of public education should be extended to the wider cultural service. And I think there's lots of people up and down the country in local authorities who are very fearful about what's to come. And my question is this: what kind of country do we want to be? Do we want to be the kind of country where culture is, by and large, for those who already access it? Or do we want to be the kind of country where culture is for everybody and local authorities take their responsibility in involving people? And I know there's a real appetite for this role from local authorities. When I put the word out that I was going to introduce this bill, I asked for people to come with examples. And I'd like to quote Councillor John Warmisham from Salford. Now, I don't know if Councillor Warmisham agrees with my bill. He might not do. But he said this to me. He said, the best example is Salford Quays. First, we had the Lowry, which attracted the Imperial War Museum in the north. This laid the foundation for Media City. This will give us more jobs than when we had the docks in Salford. Now, that to me is a powerful example of the good that culture can do, and that's coming from a local councillor. Sometimes there's a view, perhaps, in the cultural sector that local authorities don't care about cultural services, that they're not as important as housing or social services. But actually, there's a lot of councillors out there who really do care, and I want this bill to start a debate and highlight those councils that do great work and actually say, do we need to have a protection in law for cultural services provided by local authorities? I think we do, and I at least think we need to have that discussion. In Merseyside, we know, probably better than many other people in the country, the massive value of culture to places. Of course, it's about the economy, and I only need to talk about the impact that City of Culture 08 had on Liverpool and Merseyside and the wider North West. And I know people would see its importance, but it's also about the strength of community that we had. Other people have mentioned to me some of the examples of the work that went on, not in the city centre of Liverpool, but to bring culture out to wider people in Merseyside. And I know from my own constituency the empowerment it has on communities, young people, older people. In the local authorities, cultural services, bringing those people together to discuss their history, their heritage. And I think we need to ask this question, does that need some protection in law? The Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964 has given a very vital backstop to library services at times when they feel they're under constant threat of being deprioritised, being driven down, being questioned. I have every sympathy with local authority leaders having to make terribly difficult decisions at this time. However, I think that the 1964 Act is an important check on what might happen to make sure that we never face in this country the situation that my own grandfather faced when he was growing up in the interwar years, where he used to go into Liverpool Central Library, and I confess, Mr. Speaker, he used to steal books because you couldn't borrow library books for free at that time. So I think this law is a very important act, because it provides a backstop for the government to question any local authority that was going to decimate its library service. And I think we all know in our own constituencies the importance of the local art gallery, the museum, that group that brings young people from schools into the local theatre and gives them the confidence of their first performance. I think we've all seen that. And my reason for raising this bill, Mr. Speaker, was just to ask this question. Do we want the kind of country where that's available for everybody, where the Secretary of State takes a responsibility that's not prescriptive, it's not demanding, it doesn't require great funds, but it just allows an appeal that local people could make to the Secretary of State to say, please stop, we don't want our local cultural services to close. I think that's important for all of us, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in her bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Mr. Tristram Hunt, Mr. Stephen Twigg, Mr. David Miliband, and myself, sir.
Alison McGovern.
Thank you. Public Libraries and Museums Act 1964 Amendment Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 17th of June.
Friday the 17th of June. Thank you. We come now to the main business. The clerk will